Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm going through my watch later file, going way back in the bag, and found this video, Black Box 1, the Vulcan raid on the Falklands animated from the operations room. Um, this was a subscriber suggested video, like I said, just got away from me, but we're gonna do it now. So, I will link this video in the description along with links over to Patreon and my Discord channel here on YouTube. And yeah, let's go ahead and get going.
2 weeks prior to this moment, the Avro Vulcan howling down the runway on Ascension Island had not performed an air-to-air refueling in many years. After a crash training course in the dangerous skill, the crew embark on a 9,000-mile journey that would become, at the time, the longest bombing raid in history. "11 Handley Page Victor tankers have taken off with the 2 Vulcan bombers. One is to make the attack, and the other is a reserve that will return home after the first refuel. However, within minutes of the final aircraft taking flight, the mission suffers its first setback. The crew of Vulcan XM598, the primary Vulcan, discover that the cabin is not pressurizing because of a leak in a cockpit window. They are forced to return to base, and Vulcan XM607 becomes the aircraft that will carry out the attack. On the 2nd of April 1982, Argentine forces landed on and claimed the South Atlantic British territory of the Falkland Islands. The British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher demanded the islands back, and immediately ordered a naval task force to set sail from the UK to reclaim them. This would be a dangerous operation. The nearest UK territory was Ascension Island, more than 3,500.
So this was like day 2. Margaret Thatcher was in charge. This was before I was born. I'm assuming they attempted peace talks with Argentina. They controlled them at this point, and just they didn't want to give it up, I guess. Huh.
Miles away, and the British task force was vulnerable in that its air defence would rely heavily on 2 aircraft carriers. The Argentine Air Force could take off from Stanley Airfield on the Falkland Islands and use the dangerous Exocet missile against the Royal Navy, a weapon that would later destroy British ships. The only aircraft capable of carrying the ordnance to disable the runway at Stanley was the Vulcan, an aging bomber approaching retirement designed to drop nuclear weapons in western Russia. It didn't have the range to complete the enormous round trip for an ascension, and it hadn't performed conventional precision bombing or air-to-air refueling in years. An enormous engineering effort was required to get the fueling system working again, and the pilots scrambled to learn and refresh their skills. It would take 11 Victor tankers and a very complex refueling plan to put 1 Vulcan over the target. There was very little contingency for error in fuel calculations and equipment failure. Soon after Vulcan 598 aborts, Victor XL163, call sign White 4, discovers a problem with its refueling equipment and also returns home. Victor XH669, the reserve tanker, replaces White 4. At around 1:45 am, the formation enters the first of 3 refueling brackets. The Victors begin to pair up to exchange fuel until the receiver's tanks are fully topped up. Victor XL5
To be like such a special type of person to be able to do this stuff, I can't even imagine. Like I stress out of anxiety about the most ridiculous things. I couldn't imagine. Like this isn't even in my DNA. I couldn't even imagine. You'd have to have steel nerves, which is incredible to me.
511, call sign Blue 1, refuels Vulcan 607. At the conclusion of the first refuel, all of the empty tanked Victors turn towards Ascension with the exception of Blue 1, who stays with the Vulcan to top it up once more near the end of refuel bracket 1. The aircraft have been split into 3 colour-coded sections, white, red and blue. The mission is taking place in total darkness, so the grouping of aircraft into refuel groups makes locating the correct tanker for the correct refuel a little easier. Blue 1 gives 607 final top-up before turning back to Ascension. The crews of the returning Victors are discovering that there is a big problem. All aircraft in the formation are using much more fuel than planned for. Not only is this raising serious doubts of the achievability of bringing the Vulcan home to Ascension, but the returning aircraft themselves are seriously low on fuel. The attacking force enters fuel bracket 2. Red 4 briefly receives fuel from Red 2 before giving fuel on to White 2. It takes around 20 minutes in close formation to complete the transfer, after which Red 4 turns for home. The Vulcan then slots in behind Red 2 to receive its next refuel, and simultaneously White 2 refuels White 4. 15 minutes later, and with refuel bracket 2 complete, another Victor makes the turn back to base. Back at Ascension, 4 Victors are taking off. Their mission will be to get a single Victor to meet with and refuel the Vulcan on its homeward journey.
Think about how many they started with, and like the big initial like the Vulcan that's there now isn't even the one. I don't think they were supposed to carry out the mission, and now they're doing it. And then the planes that return back don't even have as much fuel as they thought they would have, so they don't even know if the Vulcan that's carrying out the mission is he gonna make it there or make it back. That's Do you imagine seeing the pilot and kind of knowing that in your head and you're still charging for it?
The reserve tanker discovers an equipment failure shortly after takeoff and returns home. If there is another problem in the remaining 3, the Vulcan will not make it home. The 30-year-old Victors and Vulcans are showing their age. 3,000 miles south of Ascension, White 2 refuels the Vulcan. They're flying into trouble as a violent electrical storm forms around them. After the refuel is complete, the aircraft begin to lurch around in the turbulent air. White 4, whose job will be to continue on with the bomber for the final refuel, pulls up behind White 2 to attempt contact with White 2's trailing fuel hose. Flight Lieutenant Biglands battles to keep his aircraft under control as the hose in front of him is flung around in the strong winds. He makes several failed attempts, but finally makes a good contact between his probe and the hose. The success is short-lived. A particularly violent oscillation in the hose shears the probe clean off Bigland's Victor. They've only taken on half of the fuel they need to continue south with the Vulcan. After discussion between the aircraft, they decide to improvise. White 4 will give its fuel back to White 2, and White 2 will continue on the long shot with the Vulcan instead. After swapping positions, Squadron Leader Bob Tuxford makes a good contact, but after a particularly violent oscillation in the hose, he disengages and pulls away, saving his aircraft. He battles several more times to re-engage with the trailing hose. Finally, as he re-establishes contact with the hose, the crew begin to see the horizon and stars ahead of them, and as they feel the clean, stable air, they realise they've made it through the storm. After the refueling is complete, White 4 turns north. The remaining 2 aircraft decide to perform one more short refuel to make sure that White 4's probe is not lodged inside the hose. This is completed successfully, and the 2 continue south. White 2's tanks are desperately short of the fuel needed to give to the Vulcan for it to have any chance of making it home after the bomb run. They decide to give what they can and let Flight Lieutenant Martin Withers in the Vulcan make the final decision whether to abort or press home the attack. At the completion of the final refuel, Withers is shocked to find that they are 7,000 pounds of fuel short. He's furious. White 2 tells him that if he turns north with them, he can have more fuel. After briefly following them in the turn, Withers changes his mind. He transmits over the radio that we're off, and turns south toward the Falklands.
That would be me. Once I would get to a certain point that I'm like, I'm too far at this point, that would be me. I can sympathize with that. Just feeling like whatever happens, happens. Like we're gonna do it. We're gonna carry it out. We're gonna certainly die trying, and we're gonna see what happens. That part I can I know, can you imagine? I mean, just so many problems that they've encountered to try to get this one plane, this Vulcan, there.
Falkland Islands. With 300 miles to go, Withers begins his descent. The plan is to run in at low level below radar coverage, pulling up only a few miles from the target to perform the bomb run on the runway at Stanley. The onboard radar will be switched on at the latest possible moment to scan the terrain and get a final position fix. The radar on the old bomber is H2S, a radar first used on Lancasters during the Allied bombing campaign of World War II. The bombing computer still uses pulleys and string. With 40 miles to run, Withers climbs the Vulcan ready for the bomb run. Within seconds, Argentine search radars are spotting the aircraft, and air defense systems including Roland surface-to-air missiles and 35mm autocannon are preparing to greet them. At 2 minutes to target, Withers opens the bomb bay doors and the cockpit erupts with warnings as 3 Argentine fire control radars begin to attempt lock-on to the aircraft, ready to guide anti-aircraft weapons against them. The crew attempt to jam the enemy radar to prevent a lock-on. They're on the bomb run. There's little more they can do now. They howl over Stanley Airfield, and the 21 1,000-pound bombs begin to fall away from the aircraft. The instant the last bomb releases, Withers throws the Vulcan onto its side and pulls into a steep turn away. A ferocious wall of autocannon fire flashes skywards. They must escape before the Argentine Roland batteries get a missile shot away at them. The crew feel the shockwaves of the explosions as the bombs explode. They don't know it yet, but they've scored a single direct hit on the runway, and as the enemy radar warnings fade away, they realise that the immediate threat is over. However, they still need to find a way to get home. The ops room back at Ascension have scrambled a Nimrod maritime patrol aircraft, carrying droppable lifeboats and survival equipment for the crew if the Vulcan needs to ditch in the Atlantic. The Vulcan crew request that the tanker meets them much further south than planned. Withers hands over control to his co-pilot to fly towards the planned rendezvous point, and takes the opportunity to get some well-earned sleep. The mission began at midnight, and it's...
Can you imagine? You would have to have nerves and steel really tired. Well, I'm gonna take a nap. Please.
now around 8 a.m. If they are to make it home, they still have another 5 hours of flying ahead of them.
I don't care how
As they approach
exhausted
the
you
RV,
are.
he returns to the cockpit and checks the fuel situation. In his entire career, he has never seen an airborne Vulcan that has so little fuel on board. The Nimrod has come to the end of its range and has already turned back to Ascension. If they ditch now, they won't survive without life rafts. Desperately searching the sky for the lone Victor, their luck finally changes. Victor XM717 rolls out directly in front of them, hose extended. With minutes to spare before their aircraft falls from the sky, Martin Withers and his crew realise they're going to make it home. The mission was deemed such a success that further missions were ordered. A single 1,000-pound bomb had cratered the runway, preventing Argentine fast jets from taking off against the British task force until repairs could be carried out. Furthermore, the Argentine military worried about further Vulcan attacks against the mainland and pulled fighters back to defend Buenos Aires, fighters that would otherwise have been deployed against the vulnerable British fleet steaming south to reclaim what was rightfully theirs.
That is incredible. That is well, I mean, what heroes to to carry that out because it was just problem after problem after problem that they encountered. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. Um, Great suggestion by subscriber. I'm not sure at this point who they suggested it, but wow, really good suggestion and appreciate it a lot. Incredible story with heroes. Um, like I said, you'd have to have nerve of steel to do that. Um, wow, have the hair on my arms standing up. Really good story. As you guys know, I love history stuff, so anything like that, send it my way in the comments. If you guys think that they missed anything, if there's any context you guys want to add, do it in the comments, please. I'm gonna take a look at it and read it as always. And yeah, thanks for watching with me. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, share, hype, all that stuff. And hope you guys have an awesome, awesome new year. Thank you guys.